Good morning to you. Welcome. This is the front page review on Voice of the People 96.1 FM. I am Gesiri Agua. Looking at the show this morning, it's Thursday, the 27th of June, 2024. We're just a couple of days to the end of the month, and there's a lot already in the news as it is. Now, the former governor Nasir Rufai has sued Kaduna State House of Assembly over the House of Assembly's claim that 432 billion naira was siphoned during his 8-year administration, leaving the state with huge debt liabilities. Rufai filed a fundamental rights suit at the Federal High Court in Kaduna against the State House of Assembly on Wednesday. There's been this fight back and forth between Kaduna State Assembly and Malam Nasir Rufai as regards funds and how the former governor, dispensed his duties and dispensed those funds, in line with his duties. They've been brought to question as 432 billion naira has been allegedly siphoned during his 8 years administration. We'll watch and find out get more details as to what exactly this particular suit entails. Meanwhile, at least 100 houses have been razed by a cooking gas explosion in Jamata, a community in Lokoja local government area of Kogi State. It was learnt that the explosion, which happened on Wednesday, brought down buildings and destroyed properties worth millions of naira. More details, of course, will be coming your way as to how this happened. Was it leaking? What exactly happened to cause this particular explosion? Meanwhile, ASU is in the news, and the federal government and ASU they've ended their closed-door meeting yesterday with an agreement that all contentious issues would be amicably resolved to avert a strike. The ASU president, Professor Emmanuel Osodeke, who led the union's team, told newsmen after the meeting that negotiation process had begun. Well, let's watch and see how the body language of the federal government as regards this particular issue. It's been said oftentimes, ASU did say that, rightly so, they did say that this particular government has been the worst. So issue plays out. Meanwhile, there's been a lot in the news. On a sad note, the former Conga CEO, Nick Imudia, is dead, and he died by suicide, which is a really, really sad note. But we'll be getting more details in just a moment. Updates on the Kano Emirates issue. We are seeing Sanusi Bature, who is the spokesman to the governor of Kano State, talking about this issue of the emir of Kano State. And he's saying that by virtue of the High Court judgment, Sanusi remains emir of Kano State. The fact that the Kano State Assembly, under its constitutional responsibility, decided to repeal the emirate law, and the law is valid according to the judgment of the High Court. This is what he had to say. But let's hear from the horse's mouth as regards this particular issue.
The fact that I have spoken so much on this issue, even in our eyes, I think we don't want to overflog the matter, but we still owe Nigerians and Kano people the responsibility to explain the context. First of all, the ruling is confusing, of course, but to us is so clear. It's been reaffirmed by the court, and whatever happened is on the basis of that repeal law 2024 of the Kano State Assembly, which invalidates the 2019 law of the Emirates, bastardizing the Kano Emirate balkanizing it into 5. So let's use common sense. Even if the governor did not reinstate Emir Muhammad Sanusi, for the fact that the State Assembly, under its constitutional responsibility, decided to repeal the law, and the law is valid as according to the High Court decision, then automatically we are reverted to the pre-2019 circumstance of Kano Emirate, which has Emir Muhammad Sanusi as the sole Emir of one united Kano State. That is a fact. So, and going by the decision of that court, which say actions taken after the repeal of the law, what people forget to understand is that the repeal of the law was brought to the governor The fact that I have spoken so much on this issue.
All right. Well, that's the update on the Kano Emirate tussle. Well, we'll find out more details in just a moment. Meanwhile, we have update on the Kenya situation, the nationwide protest. Well, Kenya's President William Ruto, he's withdrawn the 2024 finance bill following widespread protests in the country. Let's listen.
Who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this finance bill 2024. I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 finance bill.
Well, following his announcements, President Ruto said the bill will be withdrawn. And the bill sparked public outrage due to its concerns that it would worsen the country's already high cost of living. And on Tuesday, police had opened fire on demonstrators attempting to enter the parliament building. Death cases had increased to about 10 or so during the protests. Several people died, and the 2024 finance bill will now be sent back to the National Assembly for further review and revision, as the president has, requested. So he said, I concede. It's really interesting to see that democracy, the power of democracy working here. The people said they do not want the finance bill. They came out en masse, even though that, slowly evolved from something that was a peaceful protest all the way into something so violent that lives were lost as a result of that particular protest. So the president has conceded, and he has said that he's withdrawing the 2024 finance bill following the protests of many Kenyans. It's really interesting to see democracy showing in this situation. Anyway, we get to watch and see how ours will be in Nigeria. Will there be power? Will we still have the power to protest, freely without violent altercations here and there, mind those protests, peaceful protests? Well, go ahead and let me know all about it. We are live on YouTube. It is at Voice of the People Abuja. Voice of the People Abuja. We're live on YouTube. Voice of the People Abuja. You can go ahead and call the studio lines 0808 312 8618. That is 0808 312 8618. That is the studio line. You can also send a WhatsApp message to our WhatsApp line 0700 010 961 961. 0700 010 961 961. The call line once again is 0808 312 8618. Now, the people of Kenya, they went ahead to get their president to listen to them. This is one with majority, where the majority of persons have come out to say we do not want this particular law, and we want it to be withdrawn. And then the president went ahead to oblige the people in their requests. We'll watch and see what Rufai has to say about it in terms of the growth of politics here in Africa, and just how good our leaders have been so far in terms of listening to the people. We'll get his 2 cents in just a moment. We'll take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. This is still the front page review on Voice of the People 96.1 FM. I have Mr. Rufai Oseni on the line this morning. Good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Bless you so much, Jesse. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. Update on ASU. They've decided to get on the negotiating table with the government. They have ended their closed-door meeting yesterday, and they have had an agreement that all contentious issues would be amicably resolved to avert a strike. I mean, this is looking at in looking back at what was said yesterday by the same ASU, that this particular government has been the worst so far in resolving labor issues. I mean, what do you make of this?
No, this government has been really challenging in resolving labor issues, but the truth has to be said. Let's be realistic. Have they properly solved the problem with ASU? You see, because we keep going to step forward before one step back. Today we'll negotiate and all of that, but we keep coming back to the predominant form of the problem, which is our own lack of accountability as a government to be able to solve the challenges the people face. So except we start to look critically at providing solutions, then we're not ready. And we'll constantly hover around.
And over and over and over again. I mean, it's a tale as old as time at this point. Mr. Rufai, what exactly is your advice to the both parties going into this? I mean, if we're going to solve a problem, we should be seen to solve it.
I'm not ready to advise ASU. I'm only ready to advise government. Please keep to your word. Because ASU is not the problem here. Government is always the problem. So keep to your word. That's just it. That's all I'll say, government. Who reneges on the agreement? Is it ASU? It's not ASU now. It's government.
Could there be a reason why the federal government finds it, some would think, very conducive to renege on their own agreements?
Lack of accountability. Lack of accountability, pure and simple. They're not accountable. Bad faith. Those are the factors.
Mr. Rufai, I don't think it's a thing of accountability, because when you see politicians, sometimes you see that they actually understand a level of accountability, in sense that when two of our agendas align, then we are accountable to each other as politicians. I mean, we've seen it play out, especially when strange bedfellows, come together. We see it play out. I mean, we've seen the federal government and its response to how they treat their own issues. It's always quick.
Yes, you heard what I said. Lack of accountability. The way federal government treats their own issues when it concerns them is different from the way they treat it with ASU. They have lack of accountability towards ASU. That's what I said. Yeah. That's why the federal government can buy itself his own jets, but they will never be able to do what ASU is demanding, or they reach an agreement with ASU.
It's a very confusing situation, Mr. Rufai. Is it a thing of they do not know what they were brought into office to do? Because it's confusing. How can you come to an election? I mean, we saw all that played out before the election. Give promises. So that means you are aware that there are problems. It's not like you were not aware before assuming office. You are very aware of the situation before getting into office. So every time we hear this argument of, oh, the past administration really did the economy bad, or we're not fully aware of the scope of how bad things were until we assumed office, you can't argue that, because you were aware. You were aware. At least you were on the opposing side, or you were on the other side, and you were seeing the policies the other past administration was making. So we've seen this repeat itself over and over. And at this point, we're tired of these tunes.
Remember my answer to you before? Lack of accountability. They're not accountable to the people. Don't get it twisted. You see the more promises. The promise is not what the paper they write those promises on, called the manifesto. Yeah. So when you know that, because okay, let's even analyze this way. All the promises President Tinubu wrote in his manifesto. For one day, I've never heard, we just keep hearing, no, we're going to renew hope. But we have never seen a manifesto meter where you tick out the promises you fulfilled. So there's no ticking out of the promises fulfilled. And we don't have a country that judges people based on the promises they made, but we judge them based on the sentiment of, it's my son, it's from my tribal group, or it's from my religious group. So when the parameter of even judging is wrong, there's accountability issues.
You're looking at national security, economy, agriculture, power, and oil. Anyway, there were 10 promises, right, that he made. He said, build a Nigeria for youth, sufficient jobs and all that, decent wages, create a better life. There's manufacture, create and invent more goods or services that we require, export more, import less, strengthening both the Naira and our way of life. This is 1 year after these promises have been made. Which of these?
After 1 year, has he not made the Naira worse off? Are we not importing more? Is there no problem with the economy? Is there no problem with food? Is there no problem with accountability? 1 year, has he not made things worse off? Is there no higher inflation? Has the Nigerian people collectively held him accountable?
At least
When
we
you
have some
talk
of the
this
road
country,
projects, Mr. Rufai.
no, hang on a minute. What road projects?
We have the coastal highway. At least, I mean, it's something that they have hinged as their
Coastal highway, where they use one. No, that to complete all the existing roads in Nigeria, the bill is about 15 billion. That's about 15 trillion needed to complete all the existing roads. But is that money they are using to mark for coastal roads? So why don't you use that money to even say, okay, we've completed all the existing road projects in the country? Rather than the coastal road that you are building 1 kilometer with 47 kilometers with 1 trillion. And you are destroying people's property on top of it. So is that penny wise or pounds foolish? Roads that you should have done, like the East-West road, what has been done? Nothing. Which is the major part that connects the East and the West. The economic viability of the East-West road present is more than any coastal road they're going to connect, because it's going to take them years to complete the coastal road. But the East-West road is what people pass every day. That was cut off by the floods. So, but you know, you live in a country where when you ask the accountability question, you become the enemy of state. So they gaslight you, they talk against you, they take propaganda, they take a lot of jobless people on social media to go and be writing and be abused, which those ones don't know that they are in bondage because of the 10, 15,000 naira they receive, and they snap with top politicians, they're happy.
All right. Mr. Rufai, we're seeing the Senate, we're expecting the Senate to convene an emergency plenary to consider the president's supplementary appropriation for the 2024 fiscal year today. I mean, we're seeing this moving really, really quickly. And we saw that if the National Assembly really wants to work, we've seen at least this 10th Assembly.
They're only accountable to their own self and their largesse. You know the way it goes. They're not accountable to me and you. So it's only their own selves and their largesse.
All right. Looking at some of these headlines this morning, we're seeing the president and governors to discuss at NEC meeting tomorrow on national minimum wage. State senators at the 142nd meeting of National Economic Council at Aso Rock Villa on Thursday. They will discuss the new national minimum wage. And I don't know, this conversation has dragged on for way too long, longer than it ought to have, carried on for. But I mean, what are expectations?
They say they're negotiating. Let's see. Let's see where they go.
All right, moving on. We're seeing in the news that Amnesty International on Wednesday reported that at least 540 people have been killed within the first 2 months of this year by armed invaders in rural communities of 4 local government areas in Benue State. Yesterday in the news, there was a particular community that pays a levy to bandits in Benue State as well. 20 million naira. And according to them, if you dare open your mouth and report, best believe that these guys are going to come to your house and kill
So
you
that's
in
the
broad
that's the
daylight.
that's the true state of the security problem in Nigeria. Now you see for yourself, guys. So those are the promises that were made. You can see how the hope is being renewed. Yes, I'll have to run. Bless you so much. Thanks for your time as always.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bless you.
All right, we're seeing such very, very deplorable situations at this point. But hey, some people have argued that this particular government has done its best considering the situation, the economic quagmire that we found ourselves in with the past administration. But the question now is, could there not have been decisions taken by this government that would have helped, even in one way or the other? Looking at the president's manifesto, right? We're looking at the fact that I'm going to list 10 things. He said build in Nigeria, especially for youth, where sufficient jobs and with decent wages create a better life for the youth. He talked about manufacturing, creating and inventing more of the goods and services that we require here in Nigeria. We'll be known as a nation of creators, not just consumers. He said exports more, import less, strengthening both the naira and our way of life. Looking at this is just three. We're looking at continuing assisting ever toiling farmers through enlightened agricultural policy that promotes productivity and assures decent incomes so that farmers can support their families and feed the nation. We're also looking at modernizing and expanding public infrastructure so that the rest of the economy can grow at an optimal rate. Some people will argue about this, that okay, we're seeing that being done within the FCT, but is the FCT the only part of Nigeria? We're seeing a lot of, infrastructural development, especially in roads, right? We're seeing a lot of that cut across different parts of the FCT, but is that the only public infrastructure? I mean, at this point in time, aren't we looking at a governance where, road construction should be the bare minimum? You let me know what you think about it. 0808-312-8618. He also talked about emboldening and supporting our young people and women by harnessing emerging sectors, looking at the digital economy, entertainment and culture, tourism and others to build the Nigeria of tomorrow. How much of this have we seen in the policies the president has been making so far? And the president doesn't do this alone. He has a list of ministers, different sectors of the economy, right? What are they doing to ensure that this renewed hope is not an enigma in itself? It's not something that we keep moving farther and farther and farther away from. What are they doing? Have they done enough to say that okay, Nigerians' hopes have been renewed in one way or the other? He talks about training and giving economic opportunity to the poorest and most vulnerable among us. They seek a Nigeria where no parent is compelled to send a child to bed hungry, worried whether tomorrow shall bring food. At this point in time, how many square meals a day do you eat in your family? Do you sometimes go to bed hungry? Do let me know all about this, right? Our WhatsApp line is 0700 010 961 961, or you can call the studio line 0808 312 8618. There's talk about basic health care, education, housing, making all this accessible and affordable for all. And most importantly, establishing a bold and assertive policy that will create a strong yet adaptive national security architecture and action to obliterate terror, kidnapping, banditry, all forms of violent extremism from the face of our nation. This is talking security and insurgency in one. Well, generating and transmitting and distributing sufficient and affordable electricity to give our people the requisite power to enlighten their lives, their homes, and even their dreams. How affordable is the electricity at the moment? We keep arguing that 1 year isn't enough to do some of this, to be able to achieve some of this. Nobody is saying that you should be 100%. Some people are saying that at least let us have seen 20%, a step in the right direction. 30%. What are the policies that the president should have even embarked on, instead of some of those that we have now? Because floating the naira, we should have been seeing at least a headway in that particular direction. Or we should have been seeing it, because we kept arguing. Economists were arguing that when it comes to floating the naira, some of these policies, they have to be pregnant first, and then we reap the dividends of these policies later on. Well, this is 1 year in. How far? How many dividends have we tried as much as we can to get so far? Do let me know all about it. 0700 961 961 is our WhatsApp line. Studio line is 0808 312 8618. I'll take a break and pay some bills. When I come back, we'll be speaking with Mr. Larry Oguego in just a moment. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. This is still the front page review on Voice of the People 96.1 FM. We're checking out other headlines this morning, and we'll be joined in just a moment by Mr. Larry Oguego. Looking at the news, the president on Wednesday called on Nigerians to redouble their efforts in the fight against drug abuse and trafficking in the country. He also urged support for the NDLEA in its fight against substance abuse and illicit drug trafficking. According to NDLEA, the rate of drugs entering the country and the rate at which young people are using drugs these days has skyrocketed, and so it must be checked to ensure that it doesn't go out of hand. And the president has, called on Nigerians to redouble efforts in the fight against the drug abuse. Well, let's watch and see how that will play out. Meanwhile, update on the cholera situation. Director General of the NCDC, Dr. Jide Idris, has said a state of emergency may be declared on cholera if the cases exceed a controllable level. He said the agency was still awaiting reports from teams conducting investigations. We don't know as to at what point the cases would exceed, a controllable level, right? What exactly is a controllable level? What numbers of cases does he refer to as controllable and uncontrollable? We need some of these indices to help us understand where our head is at and what the situation is at the moment. But all in all, you need to be safe. Wash your hands. Most importantly, all the time, wash your hands and ensure that your hands are clean at every point. Before you eat anything, before you put your hands on anything, wash your hands. All right, we have Mr. Larry on the phone. Good morning to you and welcome on board.
Hi, good morning. I hope everything is going well.
Everything is fine on this end. We hope you're doing well as well.
Yes, we are.
All right, let's start with Kaduna State. The former governor, Madam Nasir Rufai, has sued Kaduna State House of Assembly over Kaduna State Assembly's claims that 432 billion naira was siphoned during his 8-year administration. He filed a fundamental human rights suit at the Federal High Court in Kaduna against the State House of Assembly. What's your take on this?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that we should remember as individuals and as public office holders that the judiciary is supposed to be the last hope of not only the common man, but the privileged man. Unfortunately, men and women of privilege abuse the judiciary and then come back later to benefit from the judiciary. Sometimes they refuse to obey court orders, sometimes they ridicule the judiciary, and then later they come back. Because I remember that when Madam Rufai was the FCT minister, he had a spat with the judiciary and said all kinds of things. And today, he's going back to the judiciary because he wants protection. He wants fundamental human rights. That's where I want to start from. So for some of these governors who have immunity and they flout court orders anyhow, for the big men, that's what we call them in Nigeria, who are larger than life, who refuse to take the judiciary seriously, when something bigger than them begins to pursue them, they usually run back to the same judiciary they ridiculed. But then I was expecting that, naturally that's what they do. I remember that at different times in different states, when they wanted to set up such commissions, the first thing would be for the person who felt he was being victimized to go to court. I remember that Amechi went to court when Wike wanted to probe him. Mm. And I, of course, I expected also that Madam Rufai would go to court. I saw it coming. But the truth of the matter is that he has a right to go to court. So let's wait for the court to decide. I just wanted us to remember that we shouldn't denigrate the courts, disrespect the courts, and let her go back to the same courts. It shows that we are not really particularly discerning people. And we forget, not remember I don't want to go into the details of that particular incident, but it was saddening. It was at that time I was worried. I was like, are these guys aware that the judiciary is a peculiar institution that we should all respect? So I think we need to watch and see. Of course, it's not as if the state is not in a position to defend its position. So let's watch and see how it unfolds. The man should go and get a good legal team, because ultimately he can only delay the tide of justice. He won't be able to remove it. What is going to start now is delay process, or the judicial process. You delay this, delay that, which is what the privilege I've mastered in Nigeria. Go to court and then delay everything there until sometimes the parties will even forget. But I think the Kaduna State must be aware of that, so they should be thinking of how to also
back.
do the answer that they did. But I think most importantly, my position also is clear on the moral side. They are not saying kill Rufai. They are not saying anything unusual. They said you took money. If you didn't take money, tell them I didn't take money, and then demonstrate it. The reason a lot of these politicians are afraid of probe is because they almost always do things that will put them in bad light or indict them. Underline almost always. And that's the problem here. Because if you are as clean as a whistle, and somebody says you stole money, I didn't steal money, go and check the books. But if you have something to hide, you begin to run helter-skelter. Like some people who have not been able to appear in court for God knows how long. What are you running away from if you are indeed innocent? Come and prove your innocence and walk away. The wrong things, and then they hide under the law to either waste our time or deceive us that nothing went wrong. That is the political pattern in Nigeria. If you are clean, then come out and say, I'm clean. Let them go to court. You have accountants, you have forensic auditors. They'll bring the books. They'll see that you're clean and you go home. That is not the case in Nigeria, because almost all these guys have their hands soiled. But let's watch what happens in court.
Mr. Larry, is it possible for an innocent person in this scenario now, an innocent person to be what's it called, to be blamed wrongly, maybe to be set up in this kind of situation? Is it possible? Because the moment you investigate, you start finding maybe evidence that was planted or falsified in one way or the other, and those ones go to court. So is it possible that an innocent person can be framed in this situation?
Well, the truth is that it's very difficult. If you understand the level of documentation that is done in government transactions, you will be surprised. And if when you don't also do the documentation, it's glaring. You remember the airport case in Abia State? If you don't document, it's a problem, because there are minimum acceptable standards of documentation. For instance, for you to spend money in Nigeria, there should be appropriation. So there are ground rules. So it's difficult to do magic with financial transactions. The reason we allow corruption in Nigeria is because even the institutions that are supposed to investigate corruption and bring the perpetrators to book are not as clean as they ought to be. Because the way Nigerian laws are wired, you can actually catch anybody if you want to. The laws are clear. So if you go against the laws, you are in trouble. And we have the code of conduct bureau. Then we have the code of conduct for public servants. We have so many documents that it's very difficult to say, oh, that under the carpet, we can forget that, or you can frame that person. I know people who have been accused of wrongdoing in public service, and they said, I didn't do anything wrong. And they set up panels and they exonerated them. I know. Not at the national level. Of course, I know that even at the national level, our former petroleum minister, Tam David West, was probed repeatedly by a military administration that doesn't even give you fair hearing. And what they found ultimately was that he took a gift of wristwatch and pen, and they drank coffee. That tells you that the man was a saint. For you to lead our oil industry as minister, and then the only thing they found on you was that you received gift of pen, of wristwatch, and you drank coffee or tea. Can you imagine? So the man was above He didn't have one filling station. He went back to the classroom to teach virology after he left the ministry. So how many ministers can do that? How many persons can say, put me under the microscope, you won't see anything. You'll see wristwatch and pen. And if you look at the code of conduct for officers, he has a right to receive wristwatch and pen. These are souvenirs. So the point I'm making is that people can be above board, and it's difficult to frame anybody because the laws are there and the procedures are so detailed that it's very easy to actually indict a crook in Nigeria. But unfortunately, because the people who are supposed to indict them are largely crooked too, they're not able to do that. And to frame anybody means that you have to do magic. Because when documentation is done, it's difficult to go back, actually, very difficult, because these documents, remember that when you do documents, you copy. That's so even if you go to your office and try to falsify documents, so what of the other offices? People minute on documents. So are you going to begin to do magic with all the minutes? So it's really, I'm not afraid of people being framed. I think the critical issue is that people who are afraid of being indicted are the people causing all this trouble. It's difficult to frame anybody when it comes to financial matters in Nigeria. We have very, very elaborate rules, but we don't use them when it matters most.
All right. I just wanted to clear that because some people might be arguing that, sometimes when you fall out of favor with some people in power, they would want to smear your name in one way or the other, right? So I was just trying to get from that perspective.
It's very difficult. The papers, government doesn't forget. You'll be surprised that the documents that were used to run Nigeria 50 years ago are still archived. Transactions under the colonial era are still archived. Certain documents are still there, the actual documents. So I don't think it's not, you don't person did that. So where's the evidence? Where is the evidence? There has to be evidence. So I'm not afraid of anybody being framed. He should go and defend himself if they say he took money. But if he chooses to go to court because he's afraid of being abused, that is his right. The law says that you can go to court to enforce your fundamental human rights if your rights are being abused or you feel that your rights are about to be abused. That is the law. So, for the privilege, when they are out of favor, they suddenly remember the law. But when they're in power, they don't remember that laws exist. They punish the rest of us with their power. I wish him luck.
All right, let's move on to ASU. They got into a closed-door meeting yesterday with, they came out of that meeting with an agreement that all contentious issues would be amicably resolved to avert a strike. I don't know how, how resolved some of these issues would be because this is years and years of neglect by the federal government. So do you think there will be anything different about this?
This is a cycle that we have been used to. At the bottom of all of this crisis is the fact that government does not want to fund education properly. That is just the summary of the story. Basically because they don't believe that the system will affect them in any way. They know it won't. They don't have their kids. I've said this repeatedly. So what is likely to happen is there are two likely scenarios. It's either they're not able to make progress and ASU goes on strike, or they put some kind of palliatives on the table and then ASU postpone the full day. That's actually the usual cycle. So they'll keep postponing until they get fed up. Then they will go on strike again. And then they will get...
Students are delayed.
They'll get some crumbs from the table because ultimately what they get is still the palliative. I think we need to sit down and do an audit of the state of our public schools. You will cry. You shed blood, not tears. And these guys don't care about it. So the scenario that's likely to play out is that is you manage them, your 4 years will pass. And then if you come back, you manage them again and then push the problem to the next. For that president that will sit down and say, we can't continue like this, we need to reinvent education. The money we spend on frivolous things can reinvent education if the money is spent judiciously without the effect of corruption whittling it away. It's not rocket science to actually people actually train young people and they are raised well having both wisdom and skill. But unfortunately, what do you have in our universities? You have some universities where you have computer science departments that don't have one functional computer or laptop today, and they have approval to teach computer science. You have people who are teaching COBOL, that is old computer languages, and Fortran. They are teaching the history of computer, not computer, and the person will get a degree in computer science or computer engineering. How does that work? And we say we are educating people that will have graduates. That's why they can't get jobs, because they can't fit into. I mean, you have a degree in computer science and somebody drops a laptop and says, can you do this? No. Can you do that? No. What solution can you provide? None. So how can you get a job? So we need that leader that will sit down and say, we want to reinvent education. And they make these promises when they campaign. But as soon as they win the election, they begin to think of deals to do, oil leasing, contracts, and all of that. It's unfortunate. But then I also blame ASU, because they have not also been very, very consistent about promoting the quality of education in this country, to the extent that, I mean, until recently, ASU was always just talking about money, just like I talk about the other unions. They talk about money all the time, but they don't really think about putting this issue on the table, that we need better schools. We need, for instance, better healthcare. When Nigerian Medical Association is talking, you don't just talk about money. You're not Judas every time, money, give me more money. You need to get up and say, we have audited the standard of our professional practice, and this is the outcome of our audit. Nigerians, look at how your hospitals are. Nigerians, look at how your universities are. We cannot continue working in this space. We are not saying give us money. We are saying make these places better. But nobody's talking about that.
All right, let's leave ASU alone, because I mean, I'm sure we'll get more details as this, conversation, the agreement, as long as this is going on for, we'll get more details on that. Let's now move on to the Senate, right? They are expected to convene an emergency plenary to consider President Bola Tinubu's supplementary appropriation for the 2024 fiscal year today. I mean, the way at which the quickness of some of the plenary considerations that they have, right, the rate at which it moves is really, really fast. So it means that the National Assembly can actually work fast and produce results for all to see, right? So what exactly could be in the way of our National Assembly performing the oversight functions that they should be, that they were created to perform in the first place?
Well, they perform fast when their bosses ask them to give them results. The National Assembly actually, as a group, doesn't seem to realize that they're answerable to the Nigerian people. My opinion is that, like most politicians, they respond to their masters, to their godfathers. They don't respond to the people. And that is why we need to begin to look at transparent elections, because as long as the power of the people actually is not able to put people in elected positions, they will not regard the power of the people, unless the people force them to remember that we are here. The point I'm making is there are some political forces that install the principal officers of the National Assembly. We know how it's played out. And they are not really interested in what Nigerians need or want. They're interested in what their boss is. So when the boss wakes up in the morning and says, I want this thing this week, they will come back from the holidays and deliver. When Nigerians say we have this problem, they will just throw it away, because if it doesn't think, they owe it to their political godfathers. So they serve the interests of their godfathers. It's about reward systems. They serve who rewards them. That's why they will call short their break or whatever they are doing and hold emergency plenary session and approve money for OGA and then walk away. But if you have problems, they never start for emergency plenary to approve student loan or to approve money to handle emergency affecting people. They don't do that. They don't bother about the people, basically because they don't think that the people are relevant in putting them in office. All they have to do is to play the game, buy their ticket from the political party, and then rig the election. If they don't succeed, go to court, try to compromise the judiciary. So in all of these things, they don't really see the people. So it's a matter of rewards. They are not interested in oversight. Oversight means that they will begin to fight institutions that also give them money. Anytime you hear our political players in the National Assembly say they are going to look at something, it means apparently they want somebody to sort them out. We know, because many of the things they looked at, they didn't see the light of day. We lost 16 billion, claiming that we wanted to transform the power sector under PDP. And then some time ago, they told us, oh, we're going to prove the project that we lost 16 billion. And after they wasted more money, they threw good money after bad money. And they still didn't come up with any results. Of course, we know the scandal about Mr. Integrity and how they wanted to find out what's happening to this subsidy until they found. So I don't take them seriously, I'll be honest with you. As far as serving the people is concerned, and go and check how many constituency offices are operational. These are the kind of things media should be doing. Go and check, do investigative journalism. This one doesn't need investigation, doesn't need undercover work. Take transport, go to the offices. If you see people, they ask them, who are you, what do you do here? How do I reach your guy? How often do you hold meetings? We don't have constituency offices in Nigeria. I don't know of any properly functional constituency office. And they collect money to run those offices. And that is fraud, actually. It's fraudulent to collect the money and don't do what you're supposed to do with it. So you can go on and on and on. They don't really care about it.
All right. Let's move on to Kenya. Now, recently, the president, there was the 2024 finance bill that the president wanted to sign into law. And he just succumbed to their needs and said he was going to withdraw the 2024 finance bill following the widespread protests that even claimed some people's lives. The president said he conceded to the needs of the people. Now, looking at that, I don't know how many times in the history of Nigeria we've seen the president concede to the wants and the needs of Nigerians so far. I mean, looking at this particular administration is one of the major case studies. Nigerians kept saying they didn't want the coastal highway, but we still saw the government trying to convince Nigerians that, okay, this project is good for us. Right, so we've seen
the difference. The difference between Nigerians and Kenyans is that Kenyans don't talk on social media and on television and on radio. If they talk and don't listen, they will hold you accountable. And one fundamental difference between Nigeria and Kenya is that Kenyans fought for independence. Nigerians talked their way to independence. There are two different things. Kenya had the Mau Mau battle. It was war. There was blood on the streets. So they paid for their independence and they still cherish it. So if you touch it, they will fight back the same way the Mau Mau fought the British. In Nigeria, we talked about independence. Yes, we had face-offs here and there, but it's not on the scale of what
to which
happened in
Kenya.
Kenya. Yeah. So the point I'm making is that the same way we got independence talking, we are still talking. The reason to back down is because he knows that he can't govern that country if he continues that way. They have a people who are very quiet and everything on a normal day, but who are resilient when it comes to the governance and similar issues. If you want to put them in a box and go and drop them in a difficult place, they will not agree. So the point I'm making is that our government, our leaders are very happy that they have a docile people who are so interested in just doing business and running their lives.
Are they docile? I mean, this argument is something that maybe we should have at this point. Are Nigerians docile? I mean, we talk. There's been protests at different times.
You don't see. Nigeria is the only country where I hear civil society make a lot of noise on television and social media and mobilize for a 1 million march, and you see less than 500 people. You know, you're in Nigeria. 1 million march, all the brouhaha noise everywhere that you see miserable sometimes 120%. I don't know how 120 translates to 1 million for a country of 200 million. Then you go to countries of 50 million, 60 million. They don't make noise about 1 million march, but go and touch something they are sensitive about. Everybody will be on the streets. So we are docile. Let's call a spade a spade. Docility is not about talking. They know that if you them, you are just talking now. Okay, why the route to back down? Do you know what happened in Kenya? Do you know the magnitude of the protest? You are talking about it in Nigeria. So which protest have you done in Nigeria that are talking about in Kenya? It's an issue now.
Mr. Lario, we can't talk about that too. You're forgetting the what do they call it? NSAS protest. At least that was widely talked about.
No, the point is that no, we talked about, we did the NSAS protests. Okay, so at the end of the day, and that reminds you, in fact, you just helped me even, because NSAS protests got our government to begin to make concessions on a daily basis. We want this. They say, okay, we have scrapped SARS. We want that. In fact, what you just said even put spade to the conversation. That's it's evidence of what I said. That when people sit down and they just talk, nobody listens. When you do the needful, they will listen by force. I was in Enugu when the NSAS protest happened, and I didn't see one Hilux. I didn't see one Hilux van on the street. I didn't see any Prado. I didn't see any luxury vehicle for days. I didn't see one luxury vehicle. Everybody became well behaved. Everybody, just all the political players kept quiet. They were like ice water. Because they saw the power of the people. People were praying, as a prayer point, let this thing not explode. Hey God, please. Some people fled Nigeria, So, but another question is, what was the outcome of the answers? They made promises. As we speak today, there is SARS.
Yes.
In some places, they call them SARS. In other places, they change their name. So, and we didn't follow up. So the point I'm making is, NSAS is an isolated incident. And we got results. IBB backed down immediately. So you're even helping me to remind all of us that while we're not discussing people necessarily rioting, but protest is legitimate. NSAS was a very legitimate protest. Very, very legitimate, until the government started doing things that made hoodlums pretending to be NSAS operatives to cause mayhem. But the truth of the matter is that we have a right to protest in a democracy. It's an inalienable right. You have right to say, I no agree. You have right to picket. You have right to do sit-ins. In fact, like we're in a civilized nation, the police will just escort you to provide security and all of that. And you do what you have to do. Of course, you know that in Lagos recently, they were even sharing snacks and all of that. I don't know where that came from. But the point I'm making is, the reason they don't take us seriously is because they assume that we can only talk. But remember that on the occasions where we did more than talk, they listened. Saprayo, they listened. NSAS, they listened. So in Kenya, they don't just talk.
The issue with some of these movements that sort of make the government listen is that it has to cost us a lot of things. Why does it have to? Why do Nigerians have to die? Because people died during this NSAS. There's been reports of people dying in different states, all across the country. Even in Kenya, people died just to get the president to listen. Why do we need to bear such a high cost to get the government to listen, something that is fundamentally ingrained in our constitution? The federal government must listen to the people.
No, when you said the constitution didn't say that when people say their opinion on social media or on television that you necessarily capitulate. That you see, that is why you need to be careful about the quality of people you elect or you allow to rig elections in your country. Because the people actually put there to protect these interests we are talking about. That's what happened in Kenya. The finance bill will pass through the legitimate process, and they paid. You go and check what happened to their Senate. The point I'm making is that when you have the right people who have constituency offices, they will come back and consult with us. And if we unanimously say, or an overwhelming majority say, we don't want this bill, if they consult with us, they will kill the bill. But that's not the democratic process in Nigeria. To do the social media bill, we screamed from the rooftops. They backed down. It rarely happens, but it happens occasionally. Especially if they need money, direct cash, and you are shouting, most of the time they don't listen to you. They just want the cash. But you remember that this time around, they also wanted to do this recent transaction, banking transaction that didn't make sense. We also started shouting. As we speak now, there are some quiet, everybody's thinking about an implementation, wait first. So sometimes they listen. But the point I'm making is that sometimes in very critical matters, they don't listen because they will test the waters, they will check so many things. But the fastest way to solve this problem is not necessarily to be demonstrating all the time. If we can manage some things locally, we don't have to do NSAS for the whole country. If we can get to that point where we insist that elections should be held properly, where we even insist that people, when the wrong person gets a ticket, we do mass voting against the person and protect our votes. And if the person refuses and risks the election, we make it impossible for the person to lead us. When we get to that point where we get leaders to understand that you cannot lead me without my consent and cooperation, we elect people who will come and consult with us before they pass bills, and then whoever signs will sign, governor or president. And when we get to that point, we can actually impeach a governor by requesting that the members of the House of Assembly should impeach him. And if they refuse, we recall them. And we can modify the laws for recall to make them simpler. The point I make that democracy in Nigeria is just a sham. We are not serious about democratic party. Every time we calculate, is it improving? Is it not improving? The politicians are finding more ingenious ways to make our democracy a laughing stock of the democratic experiment worldwide. And this is sad. That is why we have this problem. Because the democratic experience already has the checks and balances. You said, why can't they do oversight functions before now? They can't do oversight functions because the people were handpicked so that they won't do oversight functions. So where is the election?
All right, Mr. Larry, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been an interesting conversation.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. And thanks for the opportunity to look critically at these matters. I must also encourage our people to listen to their own voices. They should listen to the voice of the people and learn lessons. Protest is not only going to the street. If you see something, say something. Sometimes we condone evil. In fact, very often we do, the ordinary people. We even aid evil. A governor cannot steal your money without your cooperation. The people type the documents. People carry the files for these deals to happen. So we need to get to that point where the people begin to think of how to protect themselves. But most of the time, a lot of people think of how to benefit from the rot in the land. God forbid that will continue like that. Thanks, GOP, for enlightening the people, and I hope the people are listening. And the leaders also are listening.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, and have yourself a wonderful day. All right, to you listening, thank you so much for being a part of Voice of the People. The conversation this morning is on Front Page Review, VOP 96.1 FM. My name is Gesiri. I'll be back at 9 a.m. with news around Abuja. Coming up at 8:30 is the sports bit. Good morning.